Okay, so part 4 is on physical activity. The main thing I like to split up is the difference between activity and exercise. So this component's on activity. So it's based on your daily activity. Everyone looks at the whole 10,000 steps type model. So this is going to talk a lot about physical activity and how to increase it and kind of what we've experienced here in 2020 with the amount or the lack of physical activity because of lockdowns and gyms closing and things like that. So let's talk about physical activity. We're going to address what's called the FIT principle. That's very important to trying to figure out how much you need to do, how you're going to do it, and when you do it, and so on and so forth. The big thing with activity, it's very important for your immune system. Your lymphatic system especially is very much regulated by movement of your muscles. So when you look at activity and moving, you're doing a lot more than just, getting your movement in for the day. There's a lot of systems in our body that function based on movement, especially your lymphatic system, which is a huge part of your immune system to flush things out of your body. Cardiovascular activity does strengthen your lungs, so obviously with COVID and things like that, building a strong respiratory system is very important, and that's what cardio, which is going to be a higher form of activity, is going to help do for you. So the whole 10,000 steps a day approach is about movement, right? So people are much more sedentary, they're desk-based, desk-bound sometimes they call it, and they're not moving as much, which is negatively affecting your health. So each morning that you wake up, you're not at zero. You're actually 10,000 steps below zero. So in order to maintain your health, you got to bring yourself up to zero by moving 10,000 steps. Okay, so that could be using an activity monitor, moving around more, walking, getting your steps in. That's very important. But basically, again, you're 10,000 steps below zero. So actually, you're starting to change your health when you go beyond that. Okay, so let's say 11,000 steps, you're now 1,000 into the positive. But you're going to start off every day below zero. Okay? One thing one of the negative side effects or impacts of the whole 10,000 steps approach has done is that people think when they hit 10,000 steps, which is zero, that they can reward themselves, that they've hit a milestone. But really that's not the way it works unless you're in optimal health and you're doing exercise and things on top of that. But really that's not the time to reward yourself with something, that you've hit your goal. Your goal should be beyond that 10,000, okay? But not too much, right? So too much is not good, not enough is not good as well. So somewhere in the middle is very important. So we're going to look at how we can use activity to boost our survival and boost our immune system and what ways we can do that. But in 2020, there's a couple things that's happened. Number one, we've had reduced outdoor time, right? People have tried to stay away from others. They've stayed indoors more. Gyms were closed for quite a long period of time here in New York State. The parks were closed. I mean, they were trying to keep everyone away from each other, right? A lot of people had to move to home-based offices, which makes you you're not leaving the house, you're staying indoors. And a lot of people have home exercise equipment, but they haven't really used it. So hopefully in this time, people have gotten back into using that. But the main thing I find with home exercise equipment is unless there's some accountability or program or system you're following, it's more likely going to be a clothing rack or just a dust collector. So the main thing to look at is how do we, now moving into the fall, there's more outdoor time. It's a nice time to get out. I think more people are socially distanced, are using more masks. Obviously, we can't control what others are doing, but trying to get outside and getting fresh air is very important. Being cooped up in a house, especially as we head into winter, you want to be outside as much as possible, but making sure you're distancing yourself as much from others. Gyms have started to reopen, making sure if you go to a gym that you're just safe. A lot of gyms are following a lot of regulations and make sure that things are cleaned properly and so on and so forth. It would be very hard to exercise with a mask on, so I have not tried that, so I'm wondering how that's going to work. And again, most parks have been reopened. So being homebound, having a home office, being less active, more binge watching, more tech overload, exhaust you, right? So trying to get back to what you had done before all this stuff happened. When I look back on 2020, it's amazing how much life has changed. This new normal is totally foreign to most people, me especially. So it's a very difficult time. We're resistant to change. We're creatures of habit. So trying to change these things is a big component of this program to really focus on surviving, getting through this together. So number one, being homebound is going to reduce your, I'd say, motivation to go and do things. But getting outside is a big component right now, especially with the fall season, which is great here in Western New York. Hopefully your home office is situated well, that you can use it properly with less interruption of family and sounds, and you can get things done. But we want to increase activity definitely and get moving. So when we look at cardiovascular exercise or activity, we're looking at what's called the FIT principle. So the F stands for frequency. How many times per week should you be active? Okay? So in general, 4 to 5 days per week is what's recommended. You don't have to get 10,000 steps a day, 7 days a week, every week. You don't have to if you are and you have a lifestyle or a career that makes you active, that's great. But you don't have to exercise all the time. That's a big misconception, that you have to do exercise or have activity all the time in order to be healthy. But as we age, that obviously is very important. The seniors that are the healthiest are the ones that have been as active, are not in wheelchairs or assisted devices, and have done the most for themselves. They still garden, they still walk, they do all these things to maintain their youth. So that is very important. So F stands for frequency and the number of times per week. Now this can vary from person to person. If someone is training for, let's say, a 5K or a triathlon or something, their frequency is going to be different from yours. But for the average person, your frequency should be 4 to 5 days per week, trying to get that 10,000 steps in a day, and or this approach to cardiovascular exercise. Now your intensity primarily is going to be based on your heart rate, or RPE, which is a rate of perceived exertion, how hard you're working. A low, moderate, or high level, there's different scales to look at, but primarily is how hard are you working. If you're doing something that's a low intensity, let's say a walk, you're going to need to go further on that walk to get that amount of steps in. If you do something that's higher intensity, the duration is going to be a bit shorter. So that's where we come into time. Okay, the first T stands for time. How long should you be doing something? If it's a high intensity thing, let's say high intensity interval training, those workouts can be as short as 10, 20, 30 minutes because they're very high intensity. So if your intensity level's up, you're going to have a short duration. If you have a low intensity level, you're going to have a long duration in order to get those similar results. So the main thing to look at is your time is dictated by your intensity level. So that first T, time, is related to intensity. So again, something that is a high intensity is going to be a short duration. Something that's a low intensity is going to be a long duration. Now the type of exercise or activity can vary greatly. Okay? So if you're doing something that's more activity based, such as walking or low impact cycling or something like that, that is going to be, could be using just your body weight, could be no equipment at all. You have an outdoor bike, that's obviously something using equipment. You could be using a treadmill, elliptical, an indoor exercise bike. There's so many different options when it comes to that. Rowing machines are probably one of the best home equipment because it's going to be upper body as well as lower, as well as conditioning. But the main thing is the different type should change. You want to be cross-trained. You don't want to do the same thing all the time. If you have, let's say, an exercise bike at home, there's lots of different programs on there. Don't do the same one all the time. Your body gets bored, your brain gets bored. Do something that stimulates you to work maybe a little bit harder. Some days you work maybe a longer duration, some days you work a short duration but high intensity. Cross-training is very important. That's where it comes to the E for enjoyment and variety. Your brain, you can get very bored doing the same thing over and over again as routine. Mix it up. Those things are very important for your body. You want to keep your body guessing and trying to keep up with you. If you do the same thing over time, you're going to have diminished returns over time, and it just gets very boring. So try to spice it up by doing something you like, but also cross-training, doing different things. So again, looking back here at frequency, this is more specific in terms of an activity or aerobic exercise, which is going to be low to moderate intensity. Can be done every day. This is part of your 10,000 steps per day, and this is to maintain your health. You're not going to lose a lot of weight walking. Okay, walking is not a weight loss type approach. Activity does help with maintaining your health, but it's not going to change it substantially. So exercise, as we'll get into later, is something that really is focused on changing your health, whereas activity is more based on maintaining it. All right, so if we switch over and we go to more moderate to high intensity exercise, sometimes known as HIIT, high intensity interval training, which are highs and lows, that's probably the best way for everyone to really improve their health, because you're kind of doing a bit of resistance training as well as cardio at the same time, which is kind of considered conditioning. This is going to be a max of 4 days per week, because the other 3 days you need time to recover. If you're working out at a high intensity, you cannot do that consistently day in and day out. There's got to be some rest in there, sometimes a day in between, sometimes a couple days based on how sore you are. This is meant to really change your health. So here we're looking at what are considered composition changes, changing the amount of body fat to muscle mass you have. So changing that percentage is very important. That's where you look better, you feel better, your clothes fit better. Those are important components to look at, because that's the change that most people are looking for. Okay, so intensity. Something like this, which is an activity monitor, is going to measure that whole 10,000 step approach. This is not good for exercise. If you use a Fitbit or anything that's wrist-based, it is not good when your heart rate fluctuates, especially higher intensity training. If it's average, this is going to pick it up well. But if you're exercising a high intensity, wrist-based monitors do not work well. A chest strap or an arm strap are much more effective, because it's much more in contact with your pulse and it's way more accurate. And typically they're going to work with a Bluetooth transmitter, which is going to go to an app on your phone or tablet, which works very well at tracking your workouts. You can see where you're at, you can see which zones you're in, and it works very well in terms of motivation, but also tracking your progress over time and seeing how you're improving. So again, a chest strap or an armband is very effective. Any type of wrist monitor is just really for activity. These do not work well when it comes to higher intensity work and or exercise. So again, something that's like a Fitbit is great for a walk or biking or something like that, but anytime you're going to be pushing it a bit further, they become very inaccurate. The other way, obviously, to rate your intensity is called rating of perceived exertion, or RPE scale. So it's a 1 to 10 scale. There's a couple different scales, some go up to 5, but they're based on how you're feeling. Okay, so if you're maxed out at maximum intensity, you're 9 or 10, you're not going to be able to withstand that very long. If you're at a 1 to 2, you're probably not working hard enough. So the other thing, if you look at these intensity levels, this is going to be a short duration, right? You can't keep up a high intensity for a long period of time. So your duration up here is going to be very short. Something in the middle is going to be a mid-range, something at a lower intensity you can go for a long time. Because like walking, pretty much you could walk anywhere if you had the time. Your feet would probably kill you, but otherwise you could walk endlessly, right? So in terms of when you look at these scales, if you're looking at like an interval-based training, which would be kind of in these two zones, if you're not looking at heart rate, this is going to be up and down. So maybe you're working really hard and then you're working moderately hard. Up and down using intervals. Those work very well when it comes to conditioning and changing the way your body composition is. Okay, so look at time here. How long do you have to exercise? Low intensity is going to be anything typically over 30 minutes. Okay, it could be several hours if you're walking or biking a long distance. Lots of different apps to use that stuff with. Obviously, people have smartphones and tablets, and there's a ton of these that have accelerometers and different devices built into them to track your steps and movement. Some of them obviously are going to work with a Bluetooth chest strap or armband that's going to actually show your performance over time with your distance and all that stuff as well. You can either go for distance or time. There's different ways you can approach it, but primarily anything that's going to be 30 minutes or more is going to be typically low to moderate intensity. High intensity is going to be shorter than 30 minutes. Again, some of these workouts can be 10 minutes, 20 minutes. They're going to be high intensity, so they're going to be way more work in less time. So you're taking that long amount of time you exercise and kind of scrunch it down to a smaller timeline. Time of day, typically the best time to exercise is in the morning. Before your day gets going and whatnot, exercising in the morning is typically has been shown to be the most effective because you get it out of the way, things don't happen after work, you already have it done, right? So morning is the best, especially now since people are home based. It gets your body going, gets your mental flow, helps with productivity, which we can all use, and just getting that increased blood flow and neural flow really helps out for the day. So I always recommend people doing it in the morning before things get going, especially before my kids get up. That's hard to manage my time after that. All right, so type or mode of activity. So again, there's many different types, and choosing different types, not always doing the same one, but if you do, let's say you walk all the time, do a different route, okay? Mix it up, don't go the same way all the time. Biking, cardio equipment, there's tons of great stuff out there. The amount of people buying cardio equipment has drastically increased because gyms have been shut down for a while, and people don't really want to be around or back in gyms as much. So that's going to be an issue. It's going to be difficult to manage. But again, conditioning is going to be a higher level of activity. So something like a spin class or using an Aerodyne bike, which is upper and lower body, going to be sprints on a treadmill, HIIT training, which is body weight with or without weights. Those things really have a big impact on changing your health. So again, activity is more for maintaining your health, and conditioning is more to create stimulus for change. So your intensity is going to determine whether you're doing activity or conditioning. Another thing to look at is if you're doing some type of activity and you can breathe through your mouth or talk to someone, that's probably a low intensity activity. If you're doing something and you have to breathe through your mouth, if you have to transition from nasal breathing to mouth breathing, you're typically switching over into conditioning or exercise or anaerobic training, which is work, right? So that's where the workout comes in. So primarily, again, activity, you can breathe through your nose, you can talk to a friend. Conditioning, you're going to want to save your air, right? You're not going to be able to talk. So that's, again, if you look at an RPE scale, this is going to be, the 7 to 10 range, whereas that activity could be, the 1 to 5 range. Okay, so it's got to be something you enjoy, but working out is work. It's not easy. The main thing is getting to that point and motivating yourself to exercise is crucial. Once you get in that workout and you end it, at the end, everyone feels better, right? You might not feel like working out, but once you get those endorphins, get a good sweat, get everything going, you feel much better. Variety is the key. Cross-training, doing different things, not the same thing. Switch up the types, your routes. Mix it up. Don't do the same thing all the time. Boring will not last. If you keep doing the same thing and it's not enjoyable for you, you're probably not going to keep doing it. But you can also listen to things. You can listen to music, podcasts, try and avoid the negativity in the news these days. But those kind of things really have a huge impact, and just getting away and focusing on yourself is very important. So we always feel better after workout. Getting to workout is difficult, but motivating yourself is very important. But again, multitasking, doing multiple things at the same time. Let's say you're on an exercise bike and you're watching a movie, you're watching something entertaining. You can multitask that way. Obviously, you can answer emails and things if you're on an exercise bike. There's a lot of things you can do, but make sure it's something you enjoy. It's not drudgery. It is going to be work, but it should be something you enjoy. So the summary of part 4 is you want to apply the FIT principle to how you're approaching activity. Safely returning to the gym is an important component if you don't have home equipment. Obviously, outdoors, you're probably not going to be walking or running or biking as much with the snow. So making those things set up or setting those up at your home is very important, or if you belong to a gym or have a gym at your workspace, if you're allowed to use it, those would be important things to build up and strengthen your immune system, because we'll go into this more in terms of defense. That is one of the big components I talk about, is boosting your immune system, your lymphatic system, by using movement. Okay, so again, setting up a home gym space is crucial to that, having a space dedicated to your own personal wellness and time, and just getting outdoors. You can obviously get outdoors in the winter, cross-country skiing, snowshoeing. I know people that still bike in the winter. You need to change your gear up a bit, tires and clothing, but it can be done. So this is part 4, and the next part will be a continuation of this, and we'll go more into that. But I hope you've learned some things about activity and its effect on your wellness and immune system, and how you can apply that to your life.